Hello, I'm Joe Porter, and thank you for watching this DVD. I hope it will be helpful to gain some insight on 6-mallet marimba playing. Before we dive into learning the technique, I'd like to briefly outline why I use the grip that I am presenting. First, it is important to note that I have experimented with many 6-mallet grips out of all of the main 4-mallet techniques, that being the Musser-Stevens grip, the traditional cross grip, and the Burton grip. I did have decent results with a 6-mallet grip rooted in the Musser-Stevens grip. However, there were two main issues. Number one, as you can see, the mallets rest against the palm and therefore cannot be adjusted lengthwise. At first, this may not seem like a problem, but as you can notice that the middle mallet is unadjustable and it always sticks out just slightly past the inside and outside mallet. So if I was to do a common voicing of an octave with my inside and outside mallets and to harmonize it with a third, and if I was to play with the inside and outside mallet in the dead center of the bars to get a really nice fundamental pitch, the middle mallet always is very close to the node or hitting the node. And the node of the marimba bars is the spot that the marimba bar does not resonate. And therefore, you will not get an equal voicing, and the third will be very weak sounding. Secondly, the mallets are held horizontally and forces a lot of tension against the hands and fingers. As you can see, as I move my mallets, the fingers are the only thing that are taking the weight of the mallets. And therefore, with this grip, it's very hard to play for long periods of time. So the technique that I have personally developed is stemmed out of the Burton grip and further Ney Rizzoro's extended cross grip and Ed Sainden's fulcrum grip. The primary reasons for using the grip that I have developed are, number one, as you can see, the mallets are held with the hand and not against the hand, and therefore almost no strain is added on the hands, making it very easy to play for long periods of time. Number two, the mallets can be free and move as needed. So what I mean by this is the mallets can be moved up and down by any length that you choose. Now, a common application to using this would be taking that voicing that we just talked about of the octave and harmonizing it with the third, and just slightly moving the middle mallet back, and now all of the mallets can play in the center of the bars, creating a nice fundamental pitch. Another solution for using this is with 6-mallet independence. So if I was to play a simple arpeggio, and if I wanted to bring out a certain mallet in that arpeggio, I could either bring whichever mallet I'd like to bring out by pulling it out or moving the other ones back. So as you can see, if I highlight the first mallet, it's going to stick out more now. Now if I do this to the middle mallet will stick out more. And now with the outside mallet, that will stick out more. And thirdly, all of the mallets can be powerful, especially the middle mallet. In this technique, the middle mallet is held exactly like a drumstick in German grip. So German grip is a very common grip used by percussionists all around the world for everything from playing drum set to snare drum to even 2-mallet keyboard technique. And the basis of it is that it provides a very solid fulcrum to get a nice, consistent, and powerful stroke. So as you can see, when I hold 6 mallets, or just 3 mallets in one hand for now, the German grip is going to be exactly how the middle mallet is held. So So with this, using the German grip to hold the middle mallet, we can get a really powerful middle mallet stroke. So all of the mallets can be equally powerful in this technique, and that's will add a lot of choices for really expressing the pieces later. And fourth, most importantly, the mallets feel like a natural extension of the hand and arm, and it really creates a natural and fluid technique. And the end goal is really to not get lost in the technique, but to really express the music. And I feel with this grip that I can really enhance the music, and I don't have to get lost in the technique. I have invited one of my first year percussion students at the University of Lethbridge, Owen Francis. Owen is here to help me demonstrate holding the mallets. So Owen, before we start learning how to hold the mallets, I'd like to note that I prefer 2 of 3 of them to be wrapped in a material like tennis tape. I like the middle mallet to be left unwrapped. As you'll see later in the DVD, it's the most likely mallet to be moved. So Owen, we're going to start by holding what will become the middle mallet. So we're going to hold it just like a drumstick in German grip. So we want to create a nice solid fulcrum and just a very natural grip. Yeah, that's looking great. So the next part, we're going to turn our hand over with the palm facing up, and we're going to take the first wrap mallet and place it in between the index and middle finger, and it's going to slide under the first mallet. Looking good. Now what we have to do at this stage is to make the mallets equal. Yeah, that's looking nice. So what I was talking about is that we want the mallets, even at this stage, to be equally distant from the hand. So Owen, what we'll do is we'll wrap the pinky finger around the unwrapped mallet. Yeah, that's looking great. And then the tip of the ring finger is going to place down on the wrap mallet. Yeah, just like that. Nice. Mm-hmm. So now we're gonna rest our mallets on the marimba. That'll help place this mallet. Open our fingers up. Nice. And we're just gonna place the final mallet over the thumb, and we're gonna close our fingers again. And I'll just show this for the video. Our pinky is going to wrap around the first 2 mallets. Yeah, just like that. And then the tip of our ring finger is going to place down on what will become the outside mallet, just like that. Yeah, that's looking good. And just really wrap around that. Nice. Hey, that's looking good. And then all you have to do from here is turn it, and there you go. That's the step 1 to holding the mallets. Now, before we move on, I'd like to just note that it's possible to have a couple different positions. The most general position that I like to use is to have the tips really close to the bottom of the hand. We can also have a grip that is more choked up towards the mallet. Yeah, just like that. So later on we'll see different applications for moving the mallets. Okay. Nice. To help explain some of the fundamentals of expansions and contractions that we're going to learn with 6 mallets, I'd like to first talk about expansions and contractions with 4 mallets. And I'm going to be demonstrating them with the Burton grip. And really, I recommend before you start learning how to play 6 mallets that you really study with this technique, the Burton grip, extensively, and really go further and study Ne Rizzoro's extended cross grip and Ed Sainden's fulcrum grip. So back to explaining the expansions and contractions. In Burton grip, I'd like to just demonstrate a couple fundamentals. So primarily the index finger and thumb are used to move the inside mallet back and forth. And as you can see, the outside mallet is never moved. All the moving is done with the inside mallet. So before you start holding 6 mallets, you want to just get used to this movement of moving the index finger in and then pushing it back with the thumb and back and forth. Now to get wider intervals, you can actually start to use your middle finger and your ring finger. So I can push out with my middle finger to get a wide interval. And if I even need an interval even wider, I can push it out with my ring finger to look like that. So to just get used to this with 4 mallets is really, really critical. Now holding 6 mallets, the middle mallet is the same as with 4 mallets, so that the motion of rocking the index finger and thumb back and forth is the same. To expand on that, if we need close intervals between our outside and middle mallet, the index finger can actually lift over the middle mallet and move on the inside of the mallet and push out. And you can see that between these 2 mallets I can get a very close interval, even having them touching. Now for close intervals between the inside and middle mallets, the thumb is lifted over and pushed out. The same thing as the index finger, just opposite. And it'll look like that. So that is the basis of movement with the middle mallet. For the outside mallets, before we start talking about moving them, it's important to note that we can lift the middle mallet out of the way as needed at any time. So to do this, simply wrap your index finger around the bottom of the middle mallet and pull up. And you'll notice now that the middle mallet is lifted out of the way. If we were playing passages like this for long periods of time, you may also want to support it with your thumb. So now that the middle mallet can be moved out of the way, we can expand and contract any interval with 6 mallets that we could get with 4 mallets. So I want to just demonstrate very slowly and clearly this movement of just moving the inside mallet back and forth. And so you'll see that between my middle mallet and ring finger, I can pull out and push back to make the interval between the inside and outside mallets closer. So that is the basis of expanding and contracting with 6 mallets. And from here, just a general exercise that you can practice that can be really effective is to just improvise different chordal voicings and just random intervals. So I'll just quickly demonstrate that. And this could be, it doesn't have to be tonal at all. You're just aiming to get practice with moving the mallet. So I could just do something like this. And just to get practice, and you can do that for long periods of time with both hands, and before you know it, you'll get quite efficient at this movement. Now, the last thing I'd like to talk about with expansions and contractions is that the mallets can move into different positions. So I'll demonstrate this with 3 different colors of mallets. So what I mean by that is that the inside mallet can move and become the middle mallet, and the middle mallet can become the outside mallet, and vice versa. So to do this, all we have to do is select the mallet that we'd like to move and wrap our thumb and index finger under it, pull up and replace it. And just like that, very quickly we can move the mallets into different positions. So you might be thinking, what's the benefit of that? And there are actually quite a few benefits for it. For example, if I was to play a piece and have, in my left hand, have a very soft and heavy and dense mallet to create a really nice, rich sound in my lower octave. And then later in that piece, I had to do a one-hand roll with the mallets in a high register. This big mallet won't activate the bars and it won't speak as clearly. So I can simply just rotate the middle mallet into the outside mallet position to do this one-hand roll in a higher octave, and then if I go back to the rich bass tones, I just have to simply rotate this mallet back. So as you can see, there are many applications, and this can be quite effective in your playing. The first stroke that I would like to talk about is the triple vertical stroke. And this stroke can really be learned away from the marimba at first, and as soon as you're comfortable with holding the mallets, it'll be really easy to make. So all this stroke is a basic flex of the wrist, and if you want, you can add the arm. And all you have to do as soon as you get used to this motion is to hold the mallets evenly, and you'll have a nice triple vertical stroke. Now, even at this stage, I'd like to address that I think it's very important to practice solid fundamentals. And so when I first teach the stroke, I recommend approaching it using piston strokes. And the idea of a piston stroke is to be more efficient and to only think of one motion. So if you think of a piston, all you have to think about is down, and it's going to come back on its own. So you want to use the rebound. So all I have to think about is down and let the mallet come back. And not think about two movements of down and up, down, up. So with piston strokes, all you have to think of is one motion. So even at this stage, I really recommend practicing it with piston strokes. Now I'd like to also talk about that while it's good to practice a piston stroke, it's also possible to take a pianistic approach to this stroke. So you'll find many marimbas using this kind of motion of thinking about pulling the sound up and really expressing it with moving your arm and elbow out. So it is possible to do these strokes like this. And I really recommend learning both ways, and it really depends on the music that you want to express. So now I'd like to demonstrate triple vertical stroke exercises number 1 and number 11. Number 11 will introduce the expansions and contractions that we just talked about. So I really recommend you checking that exercise out and really working on it to get used to doing these strokes while expanding and contracting. So the next set of strokes I'd like to talk about are the single independent strokes. There are three options for these, and I'd like to talk about the first one with the outside mallet. So this can be thought of in two steps. The first step is really about thinking of the mallet as a natural extension of the hand and arm, and it's essentially just a wrist movement. Now, the second part, when we add the inside and middle mallets, we have to also add a little bit of rotation to our natural movement. So, just like in four mallets, how we practice holding the inside mallet to help rotating, you can do the same principle. So, if you think about rotating from not only now the inside mallet, but also the middle mallet. At first, if the middle mallet is closer to the inside, it'll be a little bit easier to get this rotation, and as you move it out, the rotation will be a little bit trickier, but still, just with a little bit of practice, you'll be able to do it quite well. So you can think of this motion as a natural extension and a wrist movement and a little bit of a rotation, and it'll look like this. So now I'd like to demonstrate an excerpt from my 6 mallet marimba solo, Tango the Cat. In this excerpt, I want you to focus on my right hand, and it's going to have several single independent strokes with the outer mallet, with the exception of a couple triple vertical strokes. So now I'd like to talk about the single independent stroke with the inside mallet. And this motion is almost exactly the same as with the outside mallet, only now we're rotating oppositely. So again, you want to practice with 4 mallets, really rotating just like that. And when you hold 6 mallets, that rotation is going to be the same, only again, you're going to be rotating also with the middle mallet. So it's going to look like this. So that's the basis of the single independent stroke with the inside mallet. However, I'd like to show you one more way to do this, and that's incorporating Ed Sainden's fulcrum grip. So Ed Sainden's fulcrum grip is really about adding finger movement to the Burton grip. And it's all about just adding that one more dimension to your 4 mallet playing. So to do this with 6 mallets and to do the stroke with the inside mallet, your index finger can wrap around the middle mallet and push it out of the way, and then the middle and outside mallets will be held, if you can see, just like that, between the index finger and middle finger, and that allows the inside mallet to be held with a nice fulcrum and to be completely controlled by the fingers. So this motion can be quite effective, and so it just looks like this. So both ways are really effective for doing this stroke, and I really recommend what feels best for you. And certain passages you may choose the two different ways to do that. Now, later in the DVD, when I play my concerto for 6 mallets for you, there will be a D7 arpeggio that's quite extended and flies up the marimba. And in my left hand, I really incorporate this fulcrum grip to really get equal power and to very smoothly play this D7 arpeggio up the marimba. So pay attention to that later. Okay, finally is the single independent stroke with the middle mallet. So, as I was talking about earlier, this stroke is exactly like a drum set stroke or a German grip stroke that percussionists use. The only difference now is that we have to accommodate for the inside and outside mallets. And how we do that is by lifting up on them when we play the middle mallet. So you want to think of this just like German grip, but while you're doing this stroke, you want to pull up on the inside and outside mallets. So if you can see, as I pull up, the middle mallet is now lower than the inside and outside mallet, and therefore only it will strike. So how you can practice this is just by thinking of a triple vertical stroke, but letting the mallets relax and pulling up on the inside and outside mallets. And if you want to add a little bit of a rotation, that can also help get the outside mallet a little bit higher. So that's the basis for single independent strokes and the 3 different ways of doing it. So now I'd like to demonstrate single independent stroke exercise number 1. So the next series of strokes I'd like to talk about are the double vertical strokes. And just like in single independent strokes, there are again 3 ways to do this in each hand. So the first way is with the middle mallet and outside mallet. And this can really be a similar motion to 4 mallet technique. And just as we were talking about earlier, is the exact feeling of rotating from the inside mallet. And the stroke, as you'll see, is pretty much the same even if I take that middle mallet away. So to demonstrate that, I'll just do a couple double vertical strokes, and you can practice this by holding the mallet that's not being played and practicing rotating from it. So that is the double vertical stroke with the inside and outside mallets. And I'd also like to note that it doesn't matter what interval spread you have, even say an octave between the middle and outside mallets, it'll still feel like the exact rotation. So once you get used to expanding and contracting, this will become quite a useful stroke for you. Next, we have the double vertical stroke with the inside and middle mallets. And it's the exact same motion as I just talked about, only now we're rotating from the opposite direction. And again, if I take the mallet away, it's going to look like the same rotation. So you can practice this simply by rotating from the mallet that's not being played. And again, it doesn't matter what the interval spread is, this rotation still is the same. Finally, the third way is between the inside and outside mallets. And to do this, as we mentioned earlier, you need to learn how to lift the middle mallet. And so lifting the middle mallet, as I explained earlier, can be as simple as wrapping the index finger around it and pulling upwards. And if you have long passages, you can simply move the thumb underneath to support it. And so this stroke should feel exactly, again, like you're playing 4 mallets. It doesn't matter if the interval spread is very close or wide, the middle mallet is simply lifted out of the way. So that is the basis of double vertical strokes, and now I'd like to demonstrate double vertical stroke exercise number 1. So now that you can do single independent, double vertical, and triple vertical strokes, you can really play any combination of chords. And so I'd just like to talk about some of the challenges with chords and a couple solutions to overcome some constant problems. So for example, I'd like to use an excerpt from a piece by Robert Patterson called Komodo. And in my opinion, this piece is one of the greatest pieces ever written for 6 mallets. And I really recommend anyone watching this to check out Robert Patterson's music because it's some of the best music being written today. So in this excerpt, there's a voicing of a chord cluster in the right hand of a C, D, and an E flat. So at first, if you're thinking about this, your natural position for your hand is to play a C, D, and E. So that C, D, and E flat may seem impossible, but if you simply rotate, you can play this chord. Now, this is another part where adjusting the middle mallet can really help you get a nice pure sound. Because if the middle mallet is sticking out in this excerpt, and I do this rotation, if you can see, the middle mallet wants to hit right between the C and D and not just on the D. So if I simply just move the middle mallet back a little bit, all of a sudden I have a really nice voicing for that chord and position. And so if I play just a bar from this piece, it'll be really effective to play it this way. So with many chords, you'll find unique solutions to maneuver your elbows and arms in and out to play some of these more challenging voicings. Next, I'd like to talk about a common problem of playing 2 white keys with the inside and outside mallets, and playing, thinking of it like a pianist, playing a black key with the middle mallet. So at first, if you think about this, it seems a little odd, as if you were to really play in the center of the bars. The middle mallet is quite far from the black keys. So there are two solutions to this, and obviously playing closer helps, but one of the solutions is called the manual pull, and it's a technique that Dean Gronemeyer came up with. And this concept is all about raising your arm so that the middle mallet is going to be ahead or in front of the inside and outside mallets. So if I was to play like a D major chord, D, F sharp, and A, I could simply raise my arm to get this, this chord. Now, this can be quite effective and can be a quick solution, but there's one thing that I don't really like about it, and that is as you raise your arm higher, the mallets are going to be striking closer to what we call the crown and further from the core or the center. So in result, as we play closer to the core, we get a thinner sound and we don't activate as much fundamental pitch from the bars, and it's just going to be a softer sound as well. So there's another solution to this, and that's moving the mallet positioning so the middle mallet is sticking out. And so I can do that same chord now, and now I can strike it with the core of each mallet, creating a bigger sound. So you have two options to approach that. And I'd just like to comment on that, and that sometimes either one is more practical than the other. Some pieces you can adjust before you play the piece by moving the middle mallet out, or it might be a matter of moving the inside and outside mallets downwards. But sometimes the pieces won't let you do that. So what I tend to do is find a halfway point. So I'll slightly adjust it so the middle mallet is sticking out, or the inside and outside mallets are a little bit back. And now all I have to do is just minorly raise my hand and arm, and it kind of creates a halfway point where I don't have to play right at the crown of the mallets. And so it is usually a little bit more efficient when you're playing pieces. So the next series of strokes are the single and double alternating strokes. So if you can do a double vertical stroke and a single independent stroke, you can already do this at slow speeds. So in doing this technique at fast speeds, I'd just like to give you one reference of an idea that'll help you speed this up. So you can think of something simple like a teeter-totter having two kids on it, and so as one kid pushes up, the other one is down, and then as he pushes up, they alternate back and forth, and they really set up the next movement. So as you can see, when this goes fast, it'll look like that. And the same thing happens with this stroke. So to do it with my inside mallet as the one striking unit, or the single independent stroke, and the middle and outside mallet as the double vertical stroke, and to alternate, you can think exactly like that teeter-totter. So as you go down, it sets up the next one. And so to do it at fast speeds, it's just a simple alternating motion, and it'll help if you think about a central pivoting axis right here to rotate from. So if I do this technique with my inside and middle mallet as the double vertical stroke, and the outside as the single independent stroke, it's the same concept. Now lastly, is probably the most challenging one, but with practice you can get really good at it, is doing the double vertical stroke with the inside and outside mallets, and doing the single independent stroke with the middle mallet. And all you have to think about is perhaps adding upwards motion to the middle mallet stroke and thinking back downwards for the double stop. And that'll just set up each stroke. So a nice double vertical stroke, and then a nice single independent stroke, and then alternating between them. And then with practice, you can work on getting that faster. So now I'd like to demonstrate an excerpt of a piece by Kai Stensgaard called Salsa Mexicana. In this excerpt, I'd like you to focus on my left hand that really has a great demonstration of this technique. And it's going to alternating back and forth, and the double vertical stroke is going to be with my inside and middle mallet, and the single stroke with the outside mallet. And one thing, if you learn this piece and to work on, is note accuracy. And that's really one of the challenges of the excerpt. As you'll see, there will be lots of leaps, and so only with time and truly getting to know your technique will you be able to feel and trust your left hand. So in this excerpt, it's challenging because you have a really hard independent bass line that's harmonized with a melody in your right hand with a separate rhythm, so you kind of have two different things going at once. So the melody in this excerpt mostly moves by stepwise motion, so it's actually really easy to feel where the melody and where your notes are. So I recommend focusing in on your left hand when you play this piece. So now I'd like to talk about single alternating strokes between two mallets at a time. And just like many other techniques that we've talked about, there's again 3 combinations of this per hand. So the first combination with the inside and outside mallets are exactly like with 4 mallets. And you can think of this as a simple rotation from a central axis. And all we are is rotating back and forth. And now when we add the middle mallet now becomes that axis. So really, as you can see, the middle mallet is really unaffected by this movement. So if you can already do this in 4 mallets, the great news is you can already do it with 6 mallets. And so all you do is have to add to that is getting used to expanding and contracting with the middle mallet lifted out of the way for closer intervals. So again, all you want to do is practice a simple rotation, and well, you will already have the stroke mastered by your 4 mallet technique. So now the next way for this is with the inside and middle mallets. And just like we talked about a teeter-totter setting up the next stroke, the same principle can be applied. Of course, you can already do this stroke by just doing 2 single independent strokes. But if you want to think about that teeter-totter again, and you can really think about this in 2 movements, and one idea that'll help you is thinking about setting up the next stroke. And how I like to do that is while doing the inside mallet, I loosen up on my fingers, and if you can see, the fingers open up, and that sets up the middle mallet stroke to pull up and also push down. And if you want to have the middle mallet a little bit more powerful, you can actually push down with your thumb. So to demonstrate this stroke, it looks like this in 2 steps. I do a single independent stroke, but relax my fingers and open them up. And then the next stroke, I push down with my thumb, and then I pull up with the remaining fingers. And so to demonstrate it, it looks exactly like this. So with practice, you can get really high speeds this way, and that'll really help by just simply thinking about letting go and pulling up. So finally, the final combination is with the middle mallet and the outside mallet. And you can think of this as single independent strokes, but if you add a simple, just slight rotation, it'll help get this teeter-totter idea. So by doing the single independent strokes and just rotating slightly will really go a long ways, and you'll find yourself, you'll have the ability to really do efficient single alternating strokes between 2 mallets at a time with any combination. So now I'd like to demonstrate single alternating strokes between 2 mallets at a time, exercise number 1. So now, if we combine all of the techniques thus far, we can have complete independence of all 3 mallets. And I'd just like to add one thing to that, and it's going to apply to playing an arpeggio in one hand and having a constant flow of notes. So the technique that I'd like to talk about is the molar technique, and how I apply it is really thinking about horizontal and circular motion that will really help your independence become more fluid. So I'd like to first demonstrate that technique on the snare drum, and then we'll come back to the marimba and learn how to apply it. So the molar technique was not necessarily developed by Stanford Moeller. Rather, he had observed it in some of the best rudimental drummers of his time. And he noticed that these drummers were adding circular and horizontal motion to their playing, and not just vertical, straight up and down. So what Moeller did was, after studying many great snare drummers, he created a method to teach it, and really has become one of the fundamental techniques of percussion today. So I'm going to provide the basis of the Moeller technique, and I'd like to just mention that there are many great resources out there to really study this technique in depth. So I want to emphasize the horizontal and circular motion of learning the Moeller technique. So in learning this technique, it can really be broken down in a couple of movements. So the first movement you want to think about is a whip. And you can practice this without a snare drum stick in your hand. So all you have to think about is moving the elbow out and whipping it back in. So you want to think about planting the elbow against your side to get a really powerful whip, and letting the wrist really relax to finish the stroke. So this technique is going to look like this with the stick. So you get a nice powerful whip. Now the next major part of this technique is thinking about an upstroke, and all you have to think about is moving your elbow upwards and outwards. So if you relax your wrist, as you move your elbow up, your wrist will fall, giving you a stroke, and it'll look like this, so the upstroke. So if you combine these two motions, they reset each other. So what I mean by that is the whip, and then the up, and then you just do this constant cycle. So it'll look like this. Now, if you want to play larger rhythms, like that of a triplet or 16th note, you can add taps in between. So, for example, for the triplet, I'll add one tap in between the whip and the upstroke. So it'll go whip, tap, up. That at high speeds, there will still be this circular and horizontal motion, but it'll become smaller and smaller. And so the key is really all about relaxing during this. Now, if you want to play 16th notes, all you do is have to add two taps. Whip, tap, tap, up. So that is the first way to learn the Moeller. A second way, and it's really utilized by a lot of snare drummers and drum set players, is to think about a whip, and then your upstroke, you're kind of going to have several strokes during the upstroke, and it's just a matter of timing it to get the rhythm that you want. So it's kind of a looser approach, but still can be effective depending on what you want to express in the music. So that would look like a constant stream of notes. And you could think of it in kind of parts, like the whip, your elbow will be in, the second stroke, your elbow will be halfway, third stroke, all the way. Or in 16th notes, whip, elbow a little bit for the first stroke, a little bit out, and then fully extended. And so you'll just loop this cycle. So that covers the basis of the Moeller technique. And now I'd like to move back to the marimba and explain how we can apply this to 6-mallet independence. So now, holding the 3 mallets, we can apply this technique in a systematic fashion, just like on the snare drum. So if we were to approach it like a C major arpeggio, C, E, and G, we could really analyze this technique in these steps. So our first stroke could be that whip, and you don't necessarily have to whip. You could just have a nice single independent stroke like this. And then the middle mallet, you can think about moving your elbow out a little bit. And then finally, the outside mallet, fully extended. And so you're just going to repeat this circular motion, and I'll just demonstrate it slow so you can see this. So that's the idea of it. And now it doesn't matter if you start this arpeggio with any of the mallets. So for example, This time I could start it with my middle mallet, and you'll still see this circular and horizontal motion. Or lastly, with the outside mallet. So in applying the molar technique, it'll really help you relax playing independence of all three mallets at high speeds. So now I'd like to play an excerpt from my solo marimba composition called Decisions, and you're going to really focus on my left hand and see this circular and natural movement by adding the molar technique. That'll really help smoothen out the sound and really make the passage possible to play for long periods of time. So the next area of technique that I like to talk about are rolls. And I really think that rolls are one of the greatest benefits of playing with 6 mallets. As even if you compare it with 4 mallets, simply adding 2 more mallets to the mix really gives you more options and will really full out your sonorities to voice any chord. So it can be really beneficial of learning all of the possible rolls with 6 mallets, and you can really highlight it in your playing. So the first roll that I'd like to talk about is the hand-to-hand roll. And all the hand-to-hand roll is simply alternating your hands back and forth. And it doesn't matter if you have a single independent stroke in one hand, or a double vertical stroke, or a triple vertical stroke. As long as you're alternating your hands, whichever combination of strokes you have is completely fine and will still be a hand-to-hand roll. So, for example, if I have a 6-note voicing, or a 5-note voicing, or even a 2-note voicing. So all you have to do is think about really getting it relaxed and full sound to your roll. And you can practice at different volumes your roll speed. So generally, at a softer dynamic, you're going to play slower to get a really nice legato sustained sound. And as you get to a louder dynamic, usually you have to strike a little bit faster. And so that's the basis to the hand-to-hand roll. Now I'd like to talk about the hand-to-hand ripple roll. So this technique is exactly the same as in 4 mallets doing a ripple roll. For example, if I was to do a common ripple roll, 1, 2, 3, 4, that would sound like this. And now with 6 mallets, what is nice is that you have the option to add 1 more note in each hand to really fill out that texture if you desire. So how you do that with 6 mallets is simply by angling the hand and arm a little bit and letting the mallets hit one after each other, creating a ripple like this. And so it doesn't matter if you want your outside mallet first, or your inside, or even your middle mallet. So all three ways are perfectly fine possibilities, and in fact you can use that to really express the music, and you have that choice of which mallet you want to strike first. So that's usually the simple solution to ripple roll, is simply by angling and having one mallet strike before the others. And so I'd like to add one more way, and that is by simply thinking about doing a double vertical stroke with your inside and outside mallets, and while loosening up the middle mallet, letting the middle mallet to strike right after. So all you have to do is really loosen up on that middle mallet, and it'll sound like this. So the mallets don't strike at the same time, just the middle mallet strikes after. So one of the benefits of this way is if you really want to bring out that middle mallet sonority, you can just have a higher height for the middle mallet, and you can really have a nice voicing that way. So now I'd like to demonstrate just a simple exercise so you can hear the difference, and that's alternating between a hand-to-hand roll and a hand-to-hand ripple roll. So as you can hear, you have two musical solutions to really express how you want your roll to sound that way. So the next series of rolls is the one-hand roll between two mallets at a time. And this is exactly the same as four mallet playing one-hand rolls. So all you have to do is simply think about a central pivot and rotate back and forth fast enough and relaxed enough to sound like a sustained roll. So if you can already do this with four mallets, the great news is you can do it with six mallets, as the middle mallet just becomes that central place to rotate. So if you can already do this technique, great. If you can't, there's a couple different ways to really isolate that technique and work on it. And one solution that I like to teach is to play a rhythm with the two mallets, and usually any odd grouping of rhythm. So simply, if I was to use a triplet, 1 lolly, 2 lolly, 3 lolly, 4 lolly, and so I'll just play that rhythm with my inside and outside mallets. And it's important while you're playing this rhythm to really highlight the main beats, as it'll highlight both the inside and outside mallets. For example, so by equally emphasizing each strong beat, both mallets get equal treatment, and you can really work out on smoothing your roll. Now, I recommend taking it further, not only by playing triplets and getting a really high speed, also try bigger groupings like fives. So there's many great ways to say fives, and use whatever works for you. For example, you could say university, 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 or if you think with Indian syllables, you could say takita taka takita taka, or tadi kinatam tadi kinatam tadi kinatam. And even further, if you really want a simpler way, you might just say 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5. It doesn't really matter as long as you're emphasizing the strong beats. So 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5. And just practice that at high speeds, and that'll really smoothen out your one-hand roll. And you can even take it further. You can do 7s, 9s, 11s, whatever you wish to do. So lastly, there is one more way to do a one-hand roll between two mallets at a time. And you can incorporate the middle mallet, and it doesn't matter if you do the inside and middle or the outside and middle. At first, this will be challenging for you, as you want to think of your central axis here and not necessarily as your middle mallet. So at first, the stroke is going to be weaker, but with practice, you can get it more effective. So that'll sound like this. So you might be saying, well, why would I need to do that? Because I could just do that stroke with my inside and outside mallets, and I'll feel really comfortable. Well, you might find in certain repertoire that you'll have a voicing where you'll go from a two-note roll to a three-note roll. So, for example, this could be quite effective if I was playing, rolling on a C and a G, and then adding the octave C later as a three-note one-hand roll. So that'll sound like this. So that is a way that I really recommend checking out and learning, because it can be quite effective later on. So as I just demonstrated, I'd like to talk about one-hand three mallet rolls. And there are two ways of thinking about this. The first way is by alternation. And all this is simply thinking about a two mallet striking unit and a one mallet striking unit, and just alternating between the two fast enough to get a nice sustained sound of a roll. So that'll look like this. So to help you think about this, and one way that I like to parallel it with is a technique used by Indian percussionists. So that technique is the split hand technique used by Indian percussionists. And what you can think of and how they teach this is splitting the hand into two striking units. The first with your index finger and thumb, and the second with the remaining three fingers. And so you want to just practice rotating back and forth. And once you have that, you can add one more dimension of moving up and down. And so in moving up and down, they not only rotate, but they think about striking in the same spot. So if you think about striking and then rotating, but also replacing your hand, just like this, that'll become effective. So the Indian percussionists, and it has been adapted on many other drums, use this to play really fast notes with one hand. So to do just a very, very short demonstration, you'll see how effective it is of getting high speeds and high rhythms. So that is the basis of the split hand technique. And so if you can do this technique, then once you go on the marimba, it becomes very easy, as the sustain of the marimba will help create a very rolled-like sound without going that fast. So it can be really relaxed. And where the parallel of replacing the same movement helps is if you're to do closer voicings, where it won't just be a central pivoting point, but you're actually going to replace that movement. So that can really help you with your one-hand three-note mallet rolls by alternation. Finally, the last way is by independence. So all this means is that the mallets are going to be striking one after each other. So to learn this, we can really think about the ripple roll that we just learned. And what you want to practice is just slowly continuing that ripple roll and you'll find that your mallets are going to feel relaxed and find a place in that movement. So just take the ripple roll very slow and speed up. So you can really think about that ripple, but continuing it, creating a constant flow of notes. So that's the first way to think about this. The second way is to really think about the one-hand roll by alternation, and then loosening up and letting that middle mallet find its place. So you can practice it like this, doing a one-hand roll by alternation. And then loosening up on the middle mallet. And then the middle mallet will find a really nice place to play in that mix. So what is the advantage of independence? Well, you can really start to control which mallets you want to emphasize, and especially the middle mallet. As you can see, I can really adjust the height of the middle mallet. So if I want the middle mallet sonority to come up, I can just really emphasize it, and that's really one of the benefits of one-hand three mallet rolls by independence. So to work on these, there's several works by Dean Gronemeyer, who's really written several pieces, and he really highlights this in all of his pieces. So I really recommend checking out his works. So now I'd like to demonstrate roll exercise number 9, which is quite a tricky roll exercise because you're alternating from a 2 mallet roll to a 3 mallet roll, and using all the voicings within an octave. So I'd like to note that it doesn't necessarily matter when you're doing the 3 mallet roll by alternation. If you want to do it by independence or by alternation, you should really strive by what kind of sound you want. So if you really want a smooth sound with no mallets emphasized, then maybe you want to do it by alternation. But if you want to highlight a certain sonority, you might want to do it by independence. That covers the basis of the 6 mallet grip. There are many more aspects that can only be developed and discussed as you advance your 6 mallet technique. It is important that you always try to stay relaxed when playing, and that will help your technique become more fluid. One of the greatest challenges with 6 mallet marimba technique is that of note accuracy. Only with time and truly getting to know the technique will you be able to feel the size of intervals throughout the marimba register. As your technique develops, your note accuracy will become better and better. I truly encourage you to play many 6 mallet marimba solos to develop your technique the furthest it can go, and use the included repertoire guide as a starting point to select appropriate pieces. I would like to end the DVD with a performance of my concerto for 6 mallet marimba so you can see the musical application of this technique. Thanks again for watching this DVD.